Got coffee in hand, laptops ready, we're making a plan. Books in the bag, ideas to flow. Steph and Joe are on the go, go, go. Sharing what we know, from the classroom to the show. It's Steph and Joe on the go. Innovation, education, moving fast with dedication. Come along, let's start the flow. It's Steph and Joe on the go.
Good morning, everyone. Joe, how have you been?
Oh, so good, Steph. You know, it's always a joy when I get to chat with you in the morning and hear that song. I know that song just starts my day bright and early. So I love it. I love it. How about you? How are you doing?
I am doing great. And it's funny because I was at a conference. Well, I don't know if it was a conference. It was like an in-person PD day for a school district. So just their school district. And they got to do breakout rooms.
Oh, yeah.
And the people at lunch, they were like, I just learned about this really cool new website. It takes content and makes songs out of it. And I was just like, oh, she just learned about Suno.
Yeah. You know, I'll tell you, I show Suno all the time, but I show it at the end of the session. And it's because I made the mistake once of showing Suno first and I lost them. Everybody was just making songs, and every once in a while you'd hear somebody because they forget to turn their sound off or lower it, and it just a song starts blaring out. I'm like, someone's playing with Suno. It's so.
Oh, we lost you, Joe. It's so what?
Oh, it's so fun. It's just fun to watch educators kind of play and have that childlike demeanor when they see this song that they not made. You know, I'd hate to say made, but a song that they helped conjure through their content and imagination. I just love when they see that song appear and they're like, "Oh my goodness, I can use this in class." And it's like, exactly, that's Suno.
It's so catchy too. Like you just remember the tune of it as soon as it starts. You're like, oh yeah, I remember this. And I would love to see like what their thinking was when they created it, because they had to think about like, how do I make this catchy so people remember the jingle?
You know what I saw the other day, and I think this could be a great idea, Steph. We could run this. It's a contest, right? Like the other day, I saw a contest that somebody was running for their students utilizing Adobe Firefly, and they had an image generation art contest. And so the students had to present their art, present their prompt, and anything they did to finalize their image, and then present it to the class. And then the class voted, and they won the AI generated art contest. I think that'd be phenomenal if we did something like that with Suno, but for educators, right?
Yeah.
Like our listeners, let's do a Suno challenge. You create your song, you do a little write-up on why you made it, what it's for, and how, you know, what you prompted. And then we share it out on the socials and be like, hey, this is our Suno music contest for educators. Let's see what you got. And then in the end, we all win because we all have these new kind of catalogs of songs that we can use in our classroom. What do you think about that?
I like that idea. And I think it would be kind of fun as well if we added some data into the mix. Like, how did your students, you know, previous year do on this topic compared to this year? You know, like after they listen to the song, like that could even mean maybe be part of the challenge.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. You know, I just ran a small class experience where I showed the kids how I make my songs, and then I asked them to write some lyrics as a class, and then we turned those lyrics into a song. So the kids themselves didn't touch Suno, but they still got to write their own lyrics, and then we brought those into Suno in real time so they can see how, you know, what's possible. It was just super cool. The kids were like amazed that their words were instantly being sung in class. It was a really great experience that I think a lot more educators should try.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so today we're going to be diving into choice, right, Joe?
Yeah, you know, because here's the thing. we always think we want to have an option of choice until there's so much choice to be made, we don't know what option we want, right? I call that the conundrum of choice. And think about it, Steph. Like if you walked into an ice cream place like Baskin Robbins, they tout, oh, we have 31 flavors to choose from. You have no idea what you want. You're going around, you're asking for a sample of this and a sample of that. And whatever you choose, you're not going to be happy with, because you're like, oh, I left so many other choices on the table.
I always go back to my original choice, cookie dough. And like, I'm always like, okay, I'll try two flavors, because I don't want to be that person that makes them go through and sample all of them. So I'm always like, okay, I'll try two new ones, but I'm going to take cookie dough every single time.
Well, yeah, I mean, as humans, we revert back to what we feel is safe, right? I mean, if you make a choice of, oh, I'm going to try this new thing, and it doesn't work out, you're like, I knew I should have got cookie dough. And you're just mad that you don't have cookie dough in front of you at that point, right? So the more choice you have, the more likely you are to revert back to what you feel is your safe choice. But if you have a smaller options of choices, instead of 31 flavors, maybe you have 5 flavors to choose from, right? Strawberry, vanilla, chocolate, and then 2 others that you want to throw in there, cookie dough, Rocky Road, whatever. You're more likely to make a faster decision, a better decision, and you're more likely to step outside of your comfort zone with that little bit of less choice. And I think that's what we really need to talk about today is there are so many tools, especially in the age of AI. There's so many tools that are coming front and center of education, and we're like, oh my goodness, there's so many of them. I don't know where to start. It's almost like a deer in the headlights. There's so many to choose from. I don't want to choose. I'm just going to stand here and still be worried or something. It can cause an issue on campus. And, think about if one of those tools is like, oh, the district's like, oh, we're going to go all in on this tool. And you're like, oh, another tool I have to learn. Like, we want choice, but when we're faced with choice, we're like, ooh, I don't know what to do. What do you think about that, Steph? Have you ever had that feeling there's too much choice, so you're just going to revert back to what you always do because you don't want to have to try something new?
Yeah, and I also saw it with students too, when I would just be like, hey, here's all these choices for how you can do this project, because I'm like, oh, they're talking about how great choices. And, I need to create that student advocacy. I think that word right there is when I'm like, oh, choices, right? Like I just go directly to choices. And I realized that when I even gave my students choices, they just kind of sat there and stared at me. And I'm like, you get all these choices. Like, why is it taking you so long to just get started? And I started to realize that I needed to narrow it down to just 2 or 3 instead of like a 9 or 12 different ideas. Because again, they were just not making choices.
No, yeah. I mean, again, we get this anxiety, I think, when you're faced with having to make a decision and you don't have maybe all the information you need to be able to make the best choice, and you kind of get stuck and you get stopped, and we kind of shut as humans. Sometimes we shut down when we don't know which is the right choice. So we're like, oh my goodness, I don't know what to choose. I mean, in adult life, we're faced with that all the time. Like, I wish I had a crystal ball and I knew which choice is going to be the best for my family. It's like, what do I do? It's the same thing in the classroom. Which tool do I use, and what can I present to my students? It's really a conundrum, because we hear all the time, I wish that we had more choice in our district, or I wish we were able to use this or that. We want choice, but then when we're faced with too much, we don't know where to start. And so I'd love today to kind of talk about, how do we, as technology leaders, tech coaches on campuses, somebody who's helping out our teachers to create these engaging experiences for students, how do we still give choice, but not make it as a choice where it overwhelms the teacher and they shut down and say, like, you know what, this is why I don't delve into this stuff. It's too much. And they go back to what they're comfortable doing. How do we provide choice, but not anxiety? Right. So what are some of your ideas, Steph? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I used a lot of like this or that choice boards where the teachers or students, as we were working through PD, they had two choices. They could either read the article or watch the video. It was the same learning goal. So, like, if you read it or watch it, it doesn't matter. You're going to get the same information out of both versions. I mean, it might be slightly different, but it's going to be mostly the same. And so, right there, I was able to allow that quick choice of do you want to read or watch the video. I did it with like a group of educators at the Ohio conference, and it was like, read about differentiation or look at this infographic. All of the adults picked the infographic. So I thought that data was kind of interesting when I was just like supporting a bunch of different adults, and I was like, oh, they're all picking this one. So that was interesting to me. Another teacher that was in our group. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, no, that's a great insight because, I've been sharing this Stanford study on cheating with a lot of educators and showcasing, like, they did a study before the pandemic, before AI came out, on likelihood of cheating for high school students, and then they decided, oh, now with AI out, let's do the same study but use AI as, are you cheating with AI, and to see if cheating has changed. And the study has shown that there's no significant change in cheating patterns with AI. But I give this to teachers and say, okay, you have the choice. One, you can read the 20-page research paper that was published online. Go ahead and have fun. Or you can look at this summary that I created with AI. Or you can listen to this podcast I made with AI. But it has all the same information, but you choose which one you want. And guess how many teachers chose reading the 20-page paper?
Probably not very many.
Zero. Yeah, zero. But that's too much to read, right? And so, we want to be able to have that choice because we don't want to be forced to do something we feel is not going to be beneficial of our time. So I love that, because that choice, right? It's the same information. It's the same stuff you need them to learn, but you're giving them 3 different modalities to do it in. I think that's a phenomenal showcase of how you can give people choice. Same stuff, but different modality. But I think if we just gave them 3 papers to read and said, choose which paper you want to read, that's when teachers would be like, I don't know which one I want to get started with. Because the moment I get started reading this 20-page paper, I'm stuck with it, right? So I think we have to throw that into the mix of choice. Is it the modality that we want to give them choice of, or is it the topic we want to give them choice of? I mean, there's a lot that goes into these decisions. So the way that you presented it, in that it's the same information, just a different modality, that is a great way to look at choice in selecting that kind of stuff. So I love it. I love that story.
Yeah, and then during that discussion, we had a coach share out how some of her teachers were providing choice to their students. And so we were also talking about like different Bloom's of taxonomy type of activities and using maybe DOK levels to support with differentiation. And so we were just like brainstorming as a group, how do you make sure that all the teachers or all the students don't complete the level 1 type of activities, right? Like, how do we make sure that they're not just recalling information, like we're actually getting teachers to create, we're actually getting them to those higher levels of Bloom's or higher levels of DOK. And she said that they use like a point scale. So a basic recall type of question might just be like 1 point, whereas something that is more creative is maybe 10 points. And the group has to get like 50 points by the end of the class period or by the end of the PD if they're doing like a self-paced PD. So I love that idea of adding points to your choice board. So you're not just focused either on those low levels, because you're not going to get enough points to reach that 50 points if you just stay at that DOK level 1 or Bloom's taxonomy recall remember stage.
Oh, so you're turning choice into kind of like a gamified platform at that point, right? And so you now have added on an extra layer of competition to the professional development or study cycle. And I like that, because you're right. If everybody chooses DOK level, well, not everybody, but if you choose just DOK level 1, you're doing all that work, kind of, because it's DOK level 1. You're doing all that work, but not going to get as many points as somebody who decides, you know what, I'm going to try doing all DOK level 2, or you know what, I'm going to do a mishmash of 2 and 3 to get more points. And then other people just sticking on 1 and they're never going to move forward. I like that idea because it really showcases the power of points, I guess. That's pretty cool. I got to start looking into that a little bit more for some of my choice boards, because I think that can kind of push people to try something new because they want to win. I like that a lot. That's fantastic.
Yeah. And I thought it would be cool too for like summer PD, where you still want to offer sessions and choice for teachers. And so maybe you as a coach make different choices where, you know, read this article, you'll get 1 point. Where if you do this lesson creation, you're going to get this many points. So you can still add that choice in to your lesson plan, and getting teachers to try maybe some new tech, because that's probably more points. That's out of their comfort zone. That should be worth more points than something that maybe is in their comfort zone, or something that's a little bit easier.
Yeah, no, I love that. You know, everybody is a competitor at heart in one way or another. And so when you start putting like a leaderboard into the mix, I think you do get a little bit more of that. Ooh, I am willing to try this thing that's a little bit farther out of my reach, a little bit farther out of my comfort zone, but it's worth 5 points. I have to try it. I like that, because then once somebody is happy with their choice, because there's that point value to it, they're more willing to stick it out through the end of that choice. That's a really great insight that I think a lot of us coaches need to start implementing, through our choice boards with point boards. I love it. That's fantastic.
I like that choice board with points for. That's great. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I think, we hear the word autonomy a lot with choice. How else can we make sure we are providing autonomy? Because that is a big motivator for a lot of teachers. I think, like when they're talking about motivation, like we have to make sure that we give autonomy. So what other ideas can we use when we're trying to reach that with our students or our staff?
Well, so I'm glad you asked that question, because one of the reasons I really wanted to talk about this topic was because of this idea that I'm putting forth to a lot of my teachers. And that is, it's not about the tech, it's about the technique, right? And so what I really am trying to instill in my staff that I'm working with is, look, I'm going to show you something. It's not about the tool. Don't focus on the tool. Focus on how I'm approaching the tool. Focus on what I'm asking the tool, what I'm giving the tool, what I'm doing with the tool, because the technique of doing that should be transferable to other tools, right? And the reason I started, kind of explaining things to teachers in this way is because of a story that I heard from another friend about an app their district bought. And I'm not going to name the app. I don't want to call anybody out, but they bought this app, and they were given a school license for all of their teachers. They're a pretty big school district, so it was pretty cool. They gave full access to the entire staff for a year for $10,000. And the staff went all in on this tool. They did trainings on this tool. All the teachers were using this tool. And then the company came back and said, "Oh, looks like you're having great success. Do you want to extend for another year?" They're like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Okay, so it's going to be $300,000 now." And they're like, "What? How can you go from $10,000 to $300,000? Right? I don't like that, but that's what happened." And so the district was like, "We can't afford that. I know we had a lot of buy-in, a lot of teachers were using it, but we can't afford $300,000 for this tool." And so it went away. And as soon as that tool went away, the teachers had no idea how to transfer their knowledge from that tool to another one, because they didn't learn any technique. They learned how to use the tool. They learned how to use the tech. And we have to stop doing that. It's not about the tool. It's not about the tech. It's about the technique you use when approaching the tool. And that technique should be transferable. For example, you remember last summer when Flipgrid was going away, right? And well, kind of going away. It's still hidden somewhere in Microsoft Teams, they say. But this idea is a lot of people, as soon as Flipgrid went away, they didn't know how to capture any more student voice or capture student videos. And everybody's like, oh, what's a Flipgrid replacement? How do you do this? How do you do this? That. That's why whenever I presented on Flipgrid, I always gave three choices of tool for one particular strategy, capturing student responses. And I'd say, if you want to try Flipgrid, here's how you capture student responses from Flipgrid. If you want to try Padlet, here's the way you can do it in Padlet. If you want to try it in Kami, here's the way you can do it in Kami. Notice, we're trying to capture student voice, but there's 3 different ways to do it. And the great thing about that, Steph, was when Flipgrid went away, they easily were able to transfer their technique of Flipgrid responses to Padlet or to Kami, because it was about the technique, not the tool. But I think too many times we as educators get stuck on a tool. This is my favorite tool. We have to ask ourselves, if that tool goes away, did we actually learn anything where we can transfer that knowledge to another tool, or are we basically out of luck because the tool is gone? You know, it's one of those things you really have to focus on, because, you know, the tool may be here today and gone tomorrow. I don't know about you, Steph, but I have a t-shirt graveyard. Do you? Do you have a t-shirt graveyard at all?
I never thought of it that way, but I do.
So I was looking yesterday for a Pi Day shirt, because Happy Pi Day, everybody. It's Pi Day. I was looking for a Pi Day to wear to my classes this morning. And I ended up getting into all of my t-shirts that were given to me by ed tech companies. And I was going through it and I was like, oh my goodness, shed a tear for Edgy. Edgy's no longer here. Oh my goodness. Oh, Zaption, shed a tear for Zaption. That one's gone. Oh, Flipgrid. Oh, I was flipping through and I was looking at my t-shirt graveyard, all the tools that don't exist anymore. And I asked myself, where have I gone from there? Right? I'm still doing this stuff, but what is the tool that replaced it? Because it was the technique. We have to make sure we're doing that with our teachers. That's why when I'm teaching about AI, I give them the technique first before I show them any of the tools. I want them to know how to truly speak or ask questions to AI before I send them to a tool where they don't have to be as articulate with their questions. Because we want to make sure they fully understand the depth and breadth of how to talk to AI. Because when you learn that strategy, it's transferable into any of the tools that are out there. But if you focus on the tool first, you have to really do very little to use those tools now. Very little thinking, very little asking, and you get a lot out of it. But if that tool goes away, again, the teachers had learned no new skill, no new technique. So we as coaches have to focus on the technique, not the tool. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, because that's the core, right? Is the instructional strategies and pieces that we need to teach teachers. And I think a lot of times too, sometimes I'll see a strategy on paper and I'm like, oh my gosh, this could be so much better with technology. So like, for example, think, pair, share. That was a strategy that was created without technology. It's been around for a while. And you do the whole, I'm going to think to myself, I'm going to share with a partner, and then we're going to share as a class. But now that you have technology, your students can think and type their thoughts, record an audio, record a video. And if you have certain tools, you can see all of their responses live. And so when I'm pairing students up, I could be intentional about who I pair them up. Where before, without the technology, it was just some random student with another random student. You can still do random, but again, now I'm able to maybe make it more intentional, where I'm like, hey, this student agreed with this, but this student disagreed. Let's put them up for a good debate. Or this student, they have similar thoughts where this student's still struggling. Maybe I'm going to pair them up. And so I think you have to think about those strategies before you even think about the technology and how it can support even sometimes better for that feedback piece, for maybe grouping students, I can look and I can say, oh, I need to work with this student. They're going to be my partner. They're not going to work with another student. So I think, again, how can we really install those strategies inside, and then what tools are going to be best to support based on that teacher, based on their classroom, based on what they need?
No, I love that. I was in an interview once where I was asked, okay, here's a question for you. What is your number one tool that you share with educators? And my answer was, I can't answer that question. And they're like, we'll give you time, think about it. I'm like, no, I can't answer that question because I don't know what educator you're talking about. And they're like, what do you mean? I go, I don't ever lead with a tool. I'm never going to show a teacher my favorite tool because that's my favorite tool. I have no idea what will resonate with this teacher. I have to sit down with the teacher. I have to listen to what is their learning style, what are their struggles, what would they, if anything was possible, what would they like to do, what would they like to change? And through kind of that initial, I guess you would call it sit down or consultation, I can then come up with a set of tools and strategies that could amplify what they're doing in the class. But I'm not going to go around like a salesman saying, here's my favorite tool, let me show you how to use it, I want you to use it. Because not every tool is going to resonate with every teacher. You have to start with the teacher. You have to start with that consultation to select the best strategy, the best tool that'll work for them. And I think that is one of the problems, is that we may, as coaches, come in with 3 different tools and say, pick one of these that we can go over. And they're like, I don't even know what these are. How can I pick one of these? We have to be able to sit down, listen, and then showcase the tools that can help them with what they're trying to achieve, their learning goals, their learning outcomes, and then use that tool, not start with the tool. And I think sometimes that is how we approach things, maybe as tech coaches, just because we get so excited about a particular tool. Or I think maybe conferences have a little something to do with it, right? Where somebody's just presenting on one tool instead of a strategy. And they're like, oh, I'm going to use this tool for everything. But you haven't really thought out, how does that fit into your strategy? How does that fit into your approach to teaching and learning? And so I think we need to make sure we are looking at our pedagogical approach first, and then choosing tools that can best fit that or enhance that, rather than the other way around.
Yeah, for sure. And I think another way that we can support as well is with goal setting of teachers, like you're kind of saying, Joe, like really looking at what goals do they have? And then you can support choice based on those goals that they have. It's not just, oh, here's a whole bunch of different choices. It's based on what they're searching for to improve in their classroom. And so that's where I like the design thinking kind of model, where you're starting with the user. What's their even goal? Okay, here's 2 or 3 different choices to help you reach that goal. And then showing them, again, that data of like, look at how far you've come after you learned about it. This is how many times you've used this new program. This is how many times you use that strategy. This is how many times I saw you praising that student based on what their goal was. So again, that kind of, here's your choices based on what your goal is. And then taking that goal and really starting to use actionable observations or data to show how they're improving is really going to motivate staff to continue to try new things, and especially creating that safe space.
Yeah, safe space is absolutely key. Saying, hey, I think that's, again, a chat that everybody needs to have with their administration, in that, hey, I'm going to try these new tools. They've been shown to be effective, but I'm just learning them. So, provide me some grace when trying these new strategies, trying these new tools, because, hey, they may not work right away. And have that grace in place. Have that grace in place for trial and error. Because we try to do that with students, right? We try to give students grace, saying, hey, if you don't understand it the first time, that's what learning's all about. Ask your questions, let's get you there. I think we need to have that same grace for educators when they are trying a new technique, new strategy, or new tool that's being pushed out. Time and grace is very important.
Yeah, for sure. That time to just practice it and come back to it. Because sometimes I think we go to the next choice. We're like, okay, they already picked that one, let's go on. But no, they really need to practice it and reflect and refine it. So
Yeah,
we
and
explored.
it has to be a low bar too. Like there can't be some big outcome because of it. For example, I've been asked to go into some classrooms and kind of review some of the different tools that are in the California state test, because that testing season is upon us, and everybody wants to kind of give their kids a review of the testing platform. And so I went over the tools. We did some games to remember what the icons look like and what they did and when to use them. But then I sent them to the practice test. And I said, all I want you to do is play, right? I don't worry about the questions. Don't worry about the answers. I just want you to play with the strikeout tool. I want you to play with the flagging tool. I want you to play with the highlighting tool. So I'm asked, just play with the tools. The kids couldn't understand. They're like, so what score do we have to get? I go, there's no score. Playing. And it didn't compute that this was a low stress, play around, kind of learn the tools kind of thing. They were just so stressed that it was a test and they have to do the best they can on a test. I'm like, no. We're just learning the tools. That's our learning outcome, not you getting a score on this practice test. But even after I said that multiple times, the kid's like, I don't know this answer. Can you help me? Like, it doesn't worry about the answer, you know? So I think sometimes we have to make sure that we give that safe place of trial and error, where you say, you're not being graded on this. You're not being assessed on this. You're not being tested on this. Just play, experience, and tell us about your experience. We have to give that kind of that space for educators too, to try new things, where they don't feel like if they don't do it right the first time, they're going to get in trouble. I think that's what we need to make sure that, we need to instill that into our ecosystem of teaching and learning.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so we chatted a lot about choice and how we can implement this. Some of my favorite moments were when we were talking about just first creating that safe space, making sure that staff feel comfortable, students feel comfortable to take those risks and to fail forward. We also explored kind of scaffolding those learnings and really starting with the instructional strategy, and then knowing your teachers, building those relationships to know which tools are maybe going to help them, using goals, and then providing those choices to them. Anything else before we get on our go, right, Joe?
That's right.
Honor that really stood out to you today.
I think gamifying a choice board, right? A choice board with points board, I think is really cool idea that I want to start looking into a little bit more when I'm doing some trainings, or maybe like a summer cohort. How can we implement that? I like that a lot. And then what also kind of really popped into my head is that we're upon conference season, right? There were some pretty big conferences that have already, passed, but, going into summer, there's quite a bit of conferences coming up. And I think teachers need to create a list of things they are looking to enhance, and then make decisions on sessions based upon that list of enhancements they want to make to their classroom, rather than, being blown away by some really, really neat topic description. Like, oh, that sounds fun. Well, go back to your list. Does it fit what you're trying to accomplish by coming to this conference? I think that would be a fantastic way of kind of having teachers prep where they want to go during a conference. Because I don't know about you, but I've seen people, go through the conference kind of schedule and then select things they want to go to, instead of coming up with a list of things they want to accomplish and then looking at that list. So be intentional when going to a conference about strategy and technique, not necessarily on a single tool that you can learn about. That's what I took away so far from this.
Yeah, I love that idea. Be more intentional. That's a great way to wrap up the episode. So let us know your biggest takeaway, and if you have any other ideas on supporting choice and that autonomy within the classroom or within teacher learning, we'd love to know, because again, you don't want to provide way too many choices, but you do want to provide that choice. And going back to that with intention, I think is the key word there.
Yes, and everybody, top of mind, me and Steph are really serious about this Suno song competition. So we're going to ideate, audience. We're going to ideate on how we can push this out to y'all. But start thinking. Do you want to submit for the the inaugural Suno classroom song competition. I think that's going to be super fun. I can't wait.
That is going to be fun. Oh my gosh. I can't even imagine some of the songs right now. All right. Well, thank you guys for listening, and make sure that you subscribe and share Steph and Joe on the Go with a Friend. We can't wait to chat with you next time.
Yeah, we love it. Thanks, everyone.